another match that we have on camera here, Josh Leyton and Franco Macchia playing an Esper Mirror. Josh, we already had on camera earlier today, dismantling a Mono Blue Devotion deck.
Prepare yourselves here, because we got an Esper Mirror, and we have one of the best players in the world in an Esper Mirror. So I feel like there's going to be a lot to learn here. As we're in game number 1, you see the life totals of 27-20 between Leyton and Macchia, and we'll see exactly how things are going to go here. Because I think, one thing with the Esper Mirror is I think both these players are probably going to play pretty quickly in game 1, because there's a lot of irrelevant and dead cards in both players' hands. A lot of the removal and the wrath effects and stuff like that, they just don't matter. You just want to make sure that you hit all of your land drops and get to the point in the game that actually matters, which is resolving an Aetherling.
Yes.
But you want to make sure that you can actually get game 1 over with in time so that you can play sideboarding games. So you take a look at Leyton's hand. He does have Aetherling in his hand, but now you play this little game of back and forth of, all right, well, how do I get to resolve this Aetherling?
Yep. It was interesting. I got to talk to William Jensen a little bit, and in the Black Pro Tour, as we see Jace, Architect of Thought, hit the table for Franco, Jace was the defining card of the Esper Mirror matches. And those decks were actually pretty flush with win conditions. They had Blood Barons and Aetherlings, in some cases things like Precinct Captain and Night Veil Spectre, and so the card advantage was really relevant. These Esper decks actually are really light on ways to literally win the game. And Jensen seemed to have a belief that at least game 1 that Jace should be de-emphasized a little bit in the mirror match. It's not as important as it was in the Black Pro Tour.
Yeah, speaking with Huey last week in the Invitational, he said to me, and he also wrote this about his Grand Prix Louisville report, where you don't really bother countering Revelations, you don't really bother countering Jaces because you only have a limited number of counter spells. You worry about Aetherling in the counter war, and that's honestly it, because the rest of the cards just don't matter very much. You see Blood Baron going to bite the dust from a Supreme Verdict here.
Shades of Carlos Romao and the Brazilian team figuring out that you don't counter the card drawing spells in the Psychotog mirror because only the Psychotogs matter at the end of the day.
Yep, that's the only thing you have to counter, and that actually led him to being a world champion.
Yep.
So Blood Baron bites the dust. You see a pretty clear board here for the most part. Both players are going to they have a ton of lands. They're obviously going to have a ton of lands. Oftentimes what people say about a control mirror is the first person to miss a land drop loses.
It's definitely a horrible thing to have happen.
See, Leyton's tapping 6 mana, so he feels like the coast is clear. Let's go for Aetherling. I wouldn't be surprised, if he has Dissolve back up for this Aetherling. You also see another Aetherling in his hand, but now the deadly that resolves has been uttered from Macchia, and now he's in a world of trouble because, sure, he's got a bunch of cards in his hand, he's got a Jace, but the most important thing just happened, as here's our hero's downfall. Josh says, Blaine, get out.
Yep. For those of you unfamiliar with these sort of control matchups, it is extremely hard to fight through one person having Aetherling if you're on the other side of it. Every removal spell in your hand turns into Fog, so you get a little bit of value there. But it's really hard to slog through this.
Now, Macchia did something important here, is that he actually cast Hero's Downfall not on Leyton's end step, but actually at the end of his second main phase. Because if he does it at Leyton's end step, then it doesn't come back until Macchia's end step. But by doing it at the end of the second main phase, what this basically says is, all right, if I've got 4 removal spells, I can kill your Aetherling. Now, sure, 4 is a lot.
Yep.
But if he does have, Doomblade, Hero's Downfall, or, Verdict plus 3 spot removal spells, he's actually going to get the job done. So he actually gives himself the opportunity to get there, which I like by him.
Yep. As you see Franco here, he just used Jace, Architect of Thought, to find his own Aetherling. Josh with a backup Aetherling in his hand.
Yeah, the big thing here for Franco, he's going to end up tapping some mana against an Aetherling of his own, is that he likely doesn't know that Leyton plays 2 Aetherlings, because you look at Franco's deck list, he only plays 1. You look at Huey Jensen's deck list over the past couple of tournaments, only playing 1. Most people are only playing 1 of this card. Having a backup one gives you an edge in the mirror because you can get a little bit more unwieldy with the first one.
Yes.
Watergrave going to come into play on tap for Macchia here. He does resolve anything, so both players do have Aetherlings in play. You take a look at the life totals now, however, 27-18. So Leyton is in the lead, and his Aetherling, since it's here first, can really begin to chase down Macchia's life total. Yeah,
critically, this is a place where Azorius Charm can also play a role in a big life link swing. That's a way for Franco to catch up with this race.
Hero's Downfall going to target the Aetherling. Now he's going to pass the turn back, it looks like. So Josh says, okay, so this is on the end step after end of turn triggers clear. So now Macchia's got access to only 2, looks like, actually I take that back, 3 blue mana. Looks like a set of Watery Graves he has access to protect his Aetherling. But you have to understand what to do in the Aetherling fights, because what you want to do in the Aetherling fights, at least from my experience, is that you want it to be, and it looks like Josh is going to play another Aetherling, and he is, so the jig is up on him having 2 of those, but you just want to use Hero's Downfall as a fog.
Yep.
Instead of just, he's kind of using it as fog right now, but you'd rather have him sink all of that mana, which would be 4 of it, and then a 5th one to blink it instead of just doing it when he's doing it.
Yeah, just managing your removal spells, trying to make it as awkward or uncomfortable for your opponent as possible to spend all their mana on Aetherling, making it unblockable and untargetable, leaving additional mana left back to protect it against other removal spells you can have. It's a lot about controlling the resources.
So you see on Aetherling for Macchia, it's going to go unblockable. Now it's going to come into the red zone. We're going to see a bunch of this back and forth. There's your bunch of pumps. Josh says, all right, Devour Flesh it. Make you spend a blue, make you blink it out. This is basically a fog. Every removal spell is basically going to be a fog at this point. The difference here is that for Josh has 2 Aetherlings. So 1 removal spell, not going to get the job done. Forces Macchia to have 2 removal spells for both of those Aetherlings to be double fogs, which makes things very, very difficult. The important thing here, too, for Leyton is that he's got tons of mana. And at this point, if you're Josh, nothing else honestly really matters. You just want to draw lands.
Yep.
So that you can just activate these Aetherlings as much as you can. You know, double activate them, double protect them, and just get this game over with. Because you see the clock in the middle there, 29:34 and ticking down. You want to have game 1 over with around that 20-minute mark so that you have enough time to play sideboarded games.
Yes.
Sideboarded games, of course, go way faster in this matchup.
Because it becomes much more of this like proactive Thoughtseize and land my threat kind of battle.
And you get to board out the rubbish too.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of cards, Supreme Verdict and many other things that are just pretty bad in the mirror in game 1. So you get to board out your crappy effects, and you just get to try to really speed up the game, because oftentimes what's going to happen in the Esper Mirror is that both players, after game 1 ends, again, there's going to be that 20-minute mark, and both players are thinking, all right, I want to get this over with. Let's go. Because if I lose game 2 and have like 3 minutes left on the clock, a draw is terrible for me.
So you see Josh right there go ahead and attack for 12. This allows him to, make both Aetherlings are lethal next turn. It lets him hold up all of his mana to protect his Aetherlings and play other reactive spells. So,
and you see Macchia realizes that, yep, the writing is on the wall. There's nothing I can do to get out from the Aetherling lock. And so he's going to concede the game. Plenty of time left to be able to win game 2 and game number 3. So Leyton does win game 1 of the Esper Control Mirror. As we're going to move to the sideboards here, I've got Macchia's in front of me, so I want to see what he's got in the sideboard. He's got 2 copies of Bloodbaron of a Scope, an Ultimate Price, 2 Doomblades, a Thoughtseize, 2 Pithy Needle, a Gainsay, an additional Aetherling, 2 Nightfield Specters, 2 Negates, and 1 Glare of Heresy. So, a quick rundown of this, and it's really odd for me to be so well-nuanced in the Esper Mirror, because I've played it so much, but Ultimate Price, not good in this matchup. Same thing can be said of those 2 Doomblades. Thoughtseize, of course, you want here, so when you do have the Aetherling battle, you can actually go in, and Thoughtseize is a proactive counterspell, for lack of a better term. You got the 2 copy of Pithy Needles if you want. You can get a little crafty and board in Pithy Needle to name Aetherling, but I don't really like that approach because that's how you plan on winning too.
Yep.
1 Gainsay can counter Revelation, counter Aetherling, counter Jace. That's definitely coming in. The additional Aetherling, of course, is going to come in because we just saw how good 2 can be as opposed to 1. 2 Nightfield Specters I love in the mirror match. Matt Costa's idea that I employed at Star City Games Open in Seattle. I won 4 Esper Mirrors that weekend based off of that card. For the same reasons that it's good in Mono Black Devotion, it's good here, and you have the mana to be able to cast it on turn 3 very easily. 2 Negates, of course, going to be good in this matchup. That can be revolved around Revelation. A Glare of Heresy can kill Detention Sphere, so I like having one of those. And then Blood Baron, a card that I actually want to discuss with you, because a lot of times in the Esper Mirror, people board out the Supreme Verdicts. If you do that, you can't get Blood Baron off the board.
Yeah.
So it's like a little game of chicken.
Right, and there's a lot of elements to that in the Esper Mirror match, I feel like, between Pithy Needle and you have these threats that some of your removal or answers line up very well against and some of them don't. There is a lot of guessing games about what's happening with Aetherlings and Blood Barons and the Planeswalkers that exist, and there's definitely a lot of room to get creative in the way you want to approach the matchup. On Josh's side, he has nothing terribly fancy. He has 2 Negates and 3 Gainsays, an additional Thoughtseize. He has 2 main and then 1 more on the board. He has 3 copies of Pack Rat, which I'm not a fan of going that route in the mirror match because of Detention Sphere. He has additional Blood Baron if he wants to go that road. He has 2 copies of Pithy Needle. Now, normally you don't really want to go down that road in a mirror match because you have a lot of the same cards, but it is worth noting that Franco showed Elspeth in game 1, which Josh does not have.
Okay.
So that's possibly a rationale for bringing in 1 or 2 of the Pithy Needles.
Any other fun toys over there?
Not really. His list is pretty lean. I mean, he's got his sideboard's 3 Doomblades, a Thoughtseize, 3 Pack Rats, a Blood Baron, 2 Needles, 3 Gainsays, 2 Negate. I mean, a very lean, efficient sideboard.
Sure.
Nothing fancy.
See, both players are going to shuffle up here for game number 2. Luis Scott Vargas chiming on Twitter, you don't often see 3 Aetherlings in play. Well, that's true.
Yeah, it is rare.
That is true. But the person who has 2 oftentimes is going to win, as opposed to the person that does have 1. And that's why we see Utter Leyton up a game here, sitting at 4-0, playing Esper Control. I don't think anyone too surprised to see Josh doing well playing this deck here in Standard.
And you know, what's also a nice benefit for Josh in this tournament, he's actually a pretty efficient player time-wise.
Yeah.
And that's a critical skill that I think a lot of control players don't spend enough time developing.
Yes.
Not just winning your games, but winning your games in time. Magic Online, I think, is actually great for developing a consciousness of the clock and trying to make your decisions efficiently.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, especially when you're making the decision to play Esper in a Standard tournament. You know that your games are going to go long. Even if you're playing like against an aggressive deck, you know your games are going to go long because it takes your deck so long to close. Yep. And get set up. Like, yes, you know, in theory they could just concede to, like, you know, a big revelation, but oftentimes your opponent doesn't do that, nor do they have to do that. So your games are going to go pretty long, and you've also got some decision trees to actually think about. So, you know, you have to be able to play this deck not only proficiently, but quickly.
Yes.
Because you do not want to pick up draws in a 10-round tournament. A draw is as good as a loss in a 10-round tournament. So you got to be quick, especially in the Esper Mirror, which can take a really, really long time.
And there's a lot of tools I think you can sideboard and try different plans. You know, the way these people are sideboarding in this matchup, it's possible something like Precinct Captain could be good. You know?
Yeah. You know, part of the reason I like Spectre, you see both players are just going to start off scrying here, typically what happens in Esper Control Mirrors. Part of the reason I actually like Nightfall Spectre in the mirrors because I like to play proactive Magic. You know me, I like to attack. And Nightfall Spectre actually just lets me be proactive. And actually just close out games pretty quickly, but also it just has a huge impact in the mirror if it connects once or twice. It's going to give me a land, it might give me a counter spell, it might give me a Jace, what have you. So, you know, everything about that card kind of adds up to the way that I actually like to play Magic, and I loved it in the mirror when I played in Seattle 2 weeks ago.
Yes, it feels extremely powerful to me in the mirror match.
So Utter Leyton, I'm going to untap. You see both players just going to play a bunch of lands to start the game off. Again, a lot of the times it's, you know, who misses the first land drop is the one that ends up losing. Also, in this matchup, because your life total doesn't really matter too much, you can afford to play your lands untapped quite a bit here. See, Utter Leyton's going to Cycle on Azorius Charm on the end step, going to draw a card, draws a Temple of Silence, has a Watery Grave there too. So we'll see the first one who's actually going to flinch on playing a relevant spell in this game. Jace, Architect of Thought, normally the one that breaks the silence in the mirror.
Yeah, and often the person who has to lead first is the person who misses the first land drop.
Yep. Well, it won't be Macchia. He's got a 5th land in an island. And he's just going to pass the turn back. So Utter Leyton's going to untap his Watery Grave. He's going to draw his card. It's an Azorius Charm. You see a Dissolve in his hand. You see the Temple of Silence in his hand as well. There is your Temple. Here is your Scry. Bottoms up, he says to that card. I'm just going to pass the turn back. So Macchia is going to draw his card. He draws a Watery Grave.
Both players just content to sit on their hands for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, not a ton to it, right? You know, just it is all about hitting land drops. I mean, you might cast a Divination to make sure that you can hit land drops. You might cast a Jace, and then, you know, you might flip over 2 cards in a spell, and you're going to take the lands off of the Jace. Just make sure you hit those land drops. Here's 4 mana, so it looks like we are going to see Jace, Architect of Thought break the silence here.
And I'm curious to see in a world where Josh has access to Gainsay and Negate if he's willing to fight a little more aggressively over something like Jace. Game 1, there's so few counters and so many cards that matter at the end of the day. But in the post-board games, he can afford to be a little more liberal. But it looks like it's just going to stick.
Now you see Macchia has turned over 3 cards here. We're wondering if Blood Baron would stay in. Because you can play the game of chicken of do they have Wrath, do they not have Wrath. So Josh is going to separate Blood Baron by itself. And there's Merciless Eviction and a Plains over here on the other side. Eviction, interesting card in this match because it can take care of a card like Detention Sphere. It can take care of a Planeswalker like Jace or Elspeth. So it's got some utility in this matchup. But it's, you know, it's interesting because now you have to look into Josh's. Is he separating Blood Baron because he bored his verdicts out? Or is he just saying, yeah, take the Blood Baron as opposed to the 2 cards, and then I'll just kill it?
Yeah.
So it looks like Blood Baron's going to go to the bottom there.
And I think that Macchia is a little light on lands in hand, so that Plains actually might have been the most valuable card of the 3 to him.
So Josh is going to cycle an Azorius Charm. He's going to draw a Dissolve off of that. Quickly untap his lands. Let's see what he finds for his draw step this turn. It's a Thoughtseize. He does have a couple more lands in his hand, so is he going to lead out with Thoughtseize? He is. You see Macchia quickly pull Negate forward. Says, I do not want you to see what's in my hand. Will Josh fight back over this with a Dissolve?
Well, I mean, this is a spot where Josh is either going to be fighting over this Thoughtseize or adding something powerful to the board of his own this turn. This is a great opening for him to land something.
I really like the way that Thoughtseize forces the action too.
Yeah.
Just all by itself, and makes it makes Macchia use one of his counterspells in the matchup. And again, counterspells are not something that are plentiful, in these Esper decks. They've got about 5 or 6 throughout their 75, so each one is very important. So Macchia's going to play a land. He's got a Plains, the card that was found off of the Jace, so not giving away any extra information. And I want to see what he's going to do with this Jace here that's on 2. Because he could tick it up to 3, or he could just let it go. Because now if he ticks it up to 3, it could get Hero's Downfalled as, wow, he's going to go for an Aether.
Macchia is just trying to stick it right here.
Well, we know Josh had a Dissolve in his hand, so that's not going to happen. I'm a little surprised to see that happen.
It's a very aggressive, I mean, the fact that Josh didn't fight over the Thoughtseize, nor did he lead up with that Thoughtseize with anything else. Macchia might have taken that as a sign that Josh was light on action or something, but that did seem like an early spot in the game to try to go for it.
Scry from the Dissolve is going to go in the bottom. Josh draws a Temple of Deceit for the turn. It's a very, very big risk because now there's one less Aetherling, and there's the chance that Josh could just tag another Aetherling with the Thoughtseize, and then it's going to be very difficult for Macchia to win. But either way, here is a Jace Architect of Thought for Utter Leyton. He's going to go minus. He's going to turn over 3 cards. You got a Gainsay, a Jace, and a Detention Sphere. Best of luck splitting these.
I mean, and Josh has 2 mana up. I feel like Jace is the most valuable card here unless the Gainsay matters for exactly next turn. And yeah.
So Josh is going to take the Sphere and the Gainsay. He has not played a land yet this turn, so you see him bring the Temple forward. I think he has got a Godless Shrine hanging there too as well that he might consider playing untapped, but we know he hasn't played a land yet, as neither player has missed a land drop. There's a Godless Shrine that's going to come to play untapped. Again, something that you can afford to do in this matchup because your life total, for the most part, doesn't really matter very much.
Yep.
So, Macchia is going to untap. He's going to draw a card for his turn. It's another Jace Architect of Thought. I think he starts his turn by ticking that down, which is what he's going to do. A Plains, an Aetherling, and an Island. I think an easy split here.
Pretty easy. Aetherling going into Franco's hand.
Begs the question now. We saw him run out the first one last turn. Does he dare do it again? I mean, we know that Josh has the Gainsay in his hand. Does he have a counterspell to fight back? Does he hold off?
Well, I think he's got to. I don't think there's any way that Frank is doing it unless he can beat more than just a Gainsay here.
Okay.
He has maybe he has a Thoughtseize to open it up. Maybe he has a Syncopate or a Gainsay or Negate of his own plus a land. Like there needs to be something else going on.
I think it would be ultra risky to cast that second Aetherling at this point.
He even has an Elspeth to test the waters with.
Yeah. And we have found it. We have found our person to miss their first land drop.
Yeah.
And it is Macchia, which is a very, very big deal here. As Utter Leyton's going to draw a card. He draws a Detention Sphere, but he does have another land in his hand. He's got, again, that Temple of Deceit that he can scry and make sure that he hits more lands with. He also has Revelation in his hand, too. So Macchia is actually going to be behind on land drops as Josh ticks his Jace up to 3. There's a scry. Bottoms up goes that card. And looks like he's happy to pass the turn back here. So Macchia is going to separate his mana. Hero's Downfall targeting the Jace. Josh says that's fine.
And in some ways it feels like Franco, that Josh has sort of broken serve here, if that makes sense.
Okay.
He's gotten to untap with a lot of resources. Macchia is getting constricted on mana, and Josh is in a position where he can start maybe even test spelling with one of his Revelations soon to get ahead on resources and land drops, and maybe land an Aetherling sometime in the near future.
Jace going to move up there for Franco, and I would not be surprised at all just to see Josh just jam a Revelation here on the end step and be that test spell, and there's exactly what he's going to do. So he's going to catch Revelation for 4 here and say, hey, is this okay? And Macchia says, that's just fine with me. So gain 4, draw 4 is what Utter Leyton is going to do.
Yeah, and with Josh having very close to a full hand anyway, I would be surprised to have seen Franco fight over that Revelations.
And Josh is perfectly fine, again, fighting over that card, like letting Franco counter it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because counterspells are at such a premium in this matchup, and there's typically between 5 to 7 after Sideboarder throughout a 75, so each one is a big deal.
So Josh is going to try to be a little bit proactive this turn to prevent discarding a bunch of cards. So we're going to see a detention sphere.
So there goes the Jace, which Franco did get multiple activations out of. So his Jace did some good work in this game. Josh, again, just wants to make sure he does hit his land drops. There's a land, another scry land. That's going to go to the bottom. See him counting the cards in his hand. He's got a couple of lands there as well. Looks like he's going to have to do a little bit of discarding. So before he does that, Macchia says, can I resolve a revelation of my own for 4?
And this, it looks like Josh is going to let that go. I was going to say, Franco's revelation is much more powerful for him here than Josh's was for Josh, because Franco's tight on land drops and just total cards in hand, but Josh was still not interested in fighting over it.
So Franco draws a bunch of cards. Among them was a Blood Baron of Viscopa. So let's see how he wants to lead out on these couple of turns. Looks like he's going to start the show off with a Thought Seize. And that's always a good place to start in the Esper Mirror.
Yep. See what's going on and work with information, strip a reactive card.
So you see a hand here for Utter Leyton. He's got a Negate. He's got a Gainsay that we've known about for a little while. Dissolve as well. There's a Jace. There's a Detention Sphere. There's a Revelation. And a land. So a lot of reactive cards in his hand.
Yep.
None of these too great to choose from with Thoughtseize. I think if I'm in this situation and we don't have Franco's hand, of course we're not working with perfect information, but to me the Revelation feels the most scary.
I think the card you want to take, it's got to either be, if you care about just which text boxes matter, then I would select Dissolve. If raw card count matters, then it's Revelations. Okay. So those are the two cards that I would gravitate towards.
Okay. It's tough here because, you know, what are you most concerned with depending on your hand? And he is going to take the Dissolve. So I guess this could be a situation here where he says, take that, slam a Blood Baron, cross my fingers, I guess?
Yeah, all this is, when Franco's taking these kind of cards, like the counter spells, he has to actually be trying to drive towards resolving something. He can't just be doing this to spin his wheels, because Josh has the backup Revelations in his hand.
Yep.
So he needs to be trying to cobble together eventually a spell that resolves, or a creature gets into play, or something. He simply can't be snapping off these Thought Seizes and then not following that into something.
Yeah. Well, he's going to follow it up into something, all right, and that's a Blood Baron of Viscopa. So after he does organize his mana to make sure that he does have Dissolve available, he is going to cast that 4/4 Pro White Pro Black Lifelinker, and looks like just passed the turn back. So Utter Leyton's going to untap. We know his hand. He just draws an Aetherling off the top.
Big draw.
Yeah, huge draw there. Can he afford to cast it right now, though? That's the question, because if you're Utter Leyton, you have to assume that, okay, if I cast Aetherling, it's probably going to come along with a 2-mana price tag of Negate or Gainsay, and then I need to make sure that I have enough blue mana to actually be able to protect the darn thing.
Yeah, you need to be able to cast Aetherling, fight over the counterspell that Franco's going to respond with, and then have blue mana left over to fight over random removal spells that could be left over.
Yeah.
But it looks like Josh has 10 mana, 6 for the Aetherling, 2 for the Negate/Gainsay, and then 2 mana left over is a reasonable amount to protect.
And I think this is always an interesting situation here. I think you cast the Negate here and not the Gainsay, because Gainsay lets you win the fight over, or lets you counter Aetherling. So I think you cast Negate in this situation, and that's what he's going to do.
Just imagine what non-blue spell you care about here. It's hard to imagine one that matters, right? The only upside of Negate is it allows him to fight over a potential Pithing Needle, which is maybe a card he cares about.
Sure. So Aetherling is in. As Macchia takes a look at his hand, kind of shaking his head a little bit here. We know about the Merciless Eviction. You can see it in his hand. We've known about that for a little while. There's an Aetherling hanging out over there too. But can he even afford to resolve this Aetherling when he knows that Josh has Gainsay? It could be a little bit of a leveling game here, though, where he just says, cast Aetherling, I dare you to Gainsay it so I can kill yours.
Well, it's certainly not going to get any better for Franco if he allows Josh to untap.
Yeah.
So I feel like you kind of have to go for it here.
Well, he's reorganizing mana. He's got a Jace to play, too. I'm not sure how great Jace is in this situation, though. Desperate times could call for desperate measures. You see him move that Aetherling towards the front, and he's go. He wants to.
I like casting. All right, he's going to play his land and take 2 damage. I like casting Aetherling here.
It feels like, so it's interesting because now it feels like to me that he's given away too much information. That his Aetherling, he's not confident that this is going to get the job done. I don't know if Josh counters this, but I feel like he's given away some information with body language and stuff of that nature where Josh can safely gainsay this and then not think that his Aetherling is going to die.
I think that with Josh ahead in life totals here and the Blood Baron now being rendered irrelevant because Josh is going to attack with his own Aetherling and a ton of mana, he's fine letting this Aetherling resolve. It's not worth the risk of maybe Franco has a Syncopate, maybe he has a removal spell that he can kill your Aetherling with, and now the Blood Baron's unchecked.
Okay.
I feel like Josh has enough of an advantage from this position that it's not worth fighting over this. Just keep your gainsay. He's going to be able to untap next turn, hit for a bunch, basically represent lethal in 2 turns.
Well, I don't think he's going to fight over this.
I mean, he's definitely debating it.
I think he is going to gainsay it now. And I thought that was really interesting because of how Macchia was so kind of hesitant to cast it.
Yeah.
And so now he's going to dissolve back, so he's going to get the opportunity to scry. But yeah, I think that maybe Josh picked up on something here that said, okay, like I can gainsay this and you can't kill mine.
Yeah, no, and if that's the suspicion that Josh had, that's totally fine. Again, I'm more speaking of sort of from an abstract perspective. Like, what are the risks of gainsaying here?
Absolutely.
But Franco's body language really didn't indicate that he had a very strong holding there, right?
Yes.
There was no tricking going on there.
And gainsay, the draw there for Josh, that gainsay is actually a huge draw for him because that's one that Franco doesn't know about from that Thoughtseize.
Yeah.
See, Josh is going to reorganize his mana here, trying to figure out, all right, Aetherling, let's get this over with here. Let's make sure we can get this done in 2 shots. Make sure I've got enough mana to actually attack and blink and block and blink out again of the Blood Baron. Make sure I don't take any unnecessary damage or no lifelink, all that good stuff. See, Josh also looks like he's considering playing a Jace.
With Franco at 14, I'm not a huge fan of Jacing here because Aetherling can hit for 9 and then 9 again the following turn, which is 18, which kills Franco even if he suicides in his Blood Baron.
Okay.
So I would probably just use my mana, keeping up gainsay and just hitting for as much as possible with Aetherling. But I certainly defer to Josh's expertise compared to mine in this position. So.
Oddly enough, as do I.
Yeah.
As do I.
I'm just telling you what I would do.
We have our line of plays, right. and the player of the year has his.
Right. I defer to the man's judgment.
So you see, he's really going to make sure, and I like how he's taking his time on this turn. He really wants to make sure that he's got everything right. Like, it would be very easy to just say, all right, Aetherling unblockable, get in there, blink it, do this, do that. As you see, Jace is going to reveal 2 lands and a Dissolve. Dissolve is going to go solo here for Macchia's side. Dissolve going to go to Utter Leyton's hand now, too. But really just taking his time on this play. Wants to make sure he doesn't make any sort of mistake because I think he feels that, hey, I'm right exactly where I want to be, and there's no reason to make some sort of boneheaded error here. And lose a game that I don't think I should lose.
Yep. And there is some merit for landing Jace that turn as you get to deal, as it basically demands an Aetherling attack, and your mana is best used this turn while Macchia is tapped out.
Absolutely.
Macchia will probably untap on his turn, have mana available, and then trying to land your own spells is more challenging. Those are the turns where you're going to be dumping into Aetherling.
So again, let's see what Josh wants to do on this turn. He's reaching for mana. How much does he want to keep those counter spells up? Because now he gets to play a really interesting game too of, I have Dissolve, but you don't know that I have Gainsay because I drew it for this turn. So you're going to play around the 3 mana counter, but there's no way you're going to play around the 2 mana counter. So what kind of, misleading of information can Utter Leyton do with his mana on this turn to make it seem like I have Dissolve, but I don't have Gainsay? And so now you're going to see an attack here for Utter Leyton. Looks like he's going to come across for some amount of damage. He's going to blink. He's just going to leave 1 mana up. So this is, again, very, very telling.
Yeah.
Because now he's only got 1 blue open for Aetherling.
Yeah, Josh is not buying it.
No.
That Franco has some chain of heroes, downfall, removal. He's not buying it.
Yeah. He doesn't think it's, sphere plus something, sphere plus downfall or what have you. He doesn't think that any of that stuff is there, as Franco's going to start off with a Temple of Silence. He's going to scry, put that card to the bottom. It's very aggressive.
Yes.
From Utter Leyton, this play.
Danny Brock, please report to the main event stage. Your side event is ready. Danny Brock, please report to the main event stage. Your side
See Macchia reorganizing his resources. He's got an Elspeth over there. But what can Elspeth do in this situation? Elspeth, you take a look at the minus ability, destroy creatures with power 4 or greater, would kill the Blood Baron, would force the Aetherlings to blink out. Are the soldiers relevant in this situation? No. Aetherling doesn't care about soldiers. So, we'll take a look. All right, we're going to come into the red zone here. So Josh says, all right, block that. Block your Blood Baron. I don't think you have anything. Is he... The question, I think another interesting question here is he even going to blink? I think in a situation he doesn't even blink, yeah.
Because Franco has an easy justification to make this attack with nothing, which is it gets into 11, which gives him an additional turn.
Yeah.
So it fits into Josh's, the narrative that he seems to have spun here of Franco just doesn't have anything that's relevant against his Aetherling.
So Josh just blocks the Blood Baron. He's going to gain 4 life, while Franco going to go up to 11 and deal 4 with his Aetherling, and now he's going to cast a Jace post-combat. Wants to, of course, make sure that he's got plenty of blue mana to be able to protect his Aetherling. Jace going to come in. You'll see the die. It's at 4. It's going to go down to 2. So there's a Hero's Downfall. There's a D-Sphere, and then there's a Godless Shrine. And Josh is going to separate the mana here. Or separate the cards, excuse me. Downfall versus D-Sphere plus Godless. Downfall going to go to the grip, can act as a fog.
Yes.
See Franco going to separate some more mana. He's got 5 mana out there. What to do, what to do.
Josh himself under some amount of pressure here as well. That Aetherling's in play and representing a 3-turn clock. Or 2 turns rather, sorry.
Yeah, 2 turns, yeah. Now Jace can actually make it a 3-turn with a +1,
sure.
yeah. So the Cumberstone effect, Josh draws another Aetherling. That might be closing time. As Josh is going to cash in his Jace, 3 cards coming. 2 Godless Shrine and a Sphinx's Revelation. Rev probably going to go by itself, and it does.
With the other Rev in his hand, I wouldn't be surprised if Josh just wants the mana here.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. So Rev going to go to the bottom. If you're Macchia, that's not the best feeling. I guess neither feeling is good there. If he takes the Rev, it's like crap. If he doesn't, it's like crap. Yeah. He wants lands. What does he want lands for? Probably the Rev in his hand. Yuck. So Josh is sitting here with 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got 10 mana in play. Hasn't played a land yet, so he can have 11 mana. He can have 11 mana here. And again, carefully navigating things here.
Yep. Aware of Hero's Downfall now in Franco's hand. The second Aetherling is very valuable here insofar as it cuts another turn out of the game for Franco.
Yep.
Or from Josh's side.
And he's going to slam that other Aetherling yet again. See, Franco's going to go through his hand. He sees that I don't have an answer. I've got a Hero's Downfall. I've got a Merciless Eviction. I've got an Elspeth. Godless Shrine going to come into play untapped for other Leyton, but I don't have an answer to the first Aetherling, let alone the second one. So Josh going to come across for 4. Says I'm going to pump once, deal you 5, put you down to 6. Yep. So here's the Hero's Downfall. Josh going to clearly blink out his Aetherling. Don't let that die. Comes back. And that's it for his turn, I believe. So, Macchia going to untap here. Draws a negate. Not the best in this situation.
No.
Jace going to get cashed in. There's, okay, Pithing Needle.
Pithing Needle's not shabby here.
It's an interesting card to be found here. There's your separate. He's going to do that very, very quickly as Macchia. So now, how does this change things? Because the Needle, I think, is a great place to start.
Well, not necessarily, because Franco's going to want to get in some amount of damage with his Aetherling, right?
I think so. Okay, so he's going to go. This is interesting. All right, so he's going to go unblockable style. Josh says, that's fine. How much you want to deal me? See him counting his mana. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's got 10 mana, 10 mana untapped, 11 total in play. Does Macchia. See, this to me, this attack felt a little bit hasty. Because you see how he's kind of counting his lands? I'm not sure he knows exactly what he wants to do with all of his mana this turn. I don't feel like he's navigated the turn in a fashion that I think he's comfortable with. I don't think he knows all the things he can do and has weighed everything that Josh can do. Because now Josh is going to go, all right, blink out my Aetherling. So is that okay? Yes. Is he going to blink out the other one? Looks like he's not. Looks like he's going to keep counter magic available.
Remember, Franco's own Aetherling is also locked up now, so any sweeper is going to also take care of his own Aetherling as well.
Okay, so this is all in response to the needle.
Yep.
We go, blink my Aetherling. Franco says, blink my Aetherling. Josh says, attempt to blink my Aetherling. So that's okay. So now Aetherlings are not in play. Just as Aetherling on Aetherling isn't fun.
It's definitely confusing.
Here's a bunch of mana. Here's an Elspeth. So now Elspeth can make tokens, and tokens are actually kind of relevant here.
Yeah. Although there's a lot of, I believe there's at least one Detention Sphere lingering in Josh's hand right now.
Okay. So now Aetherling comes back for Macchia. Aetherling going to come back here for Utter Leyton, so long as he doesn't forget. And he's going to show Detention Sphere and Dissolve. Says Sphere that, dissolve whatever counterspell you have and kill you. So Josh is just showing him, hey, I've got the answers in my hand to be able to get this game over with. Yeah, so I want to needle that, make these unblockable, and kill you.
Yep.
Yep. And he says, here's this, and Josh says, yep, I've got the
dissolve.
counterspell for that. And so Josh was trying to save a little bit of time. He says, all right, I'm going to go through this just to show you exactly what I'm going to do. He's trying to save time, but Macchia says, let's just play it out really quick. So Josh is going to play a land untapped. He's going to cast Sphere on Needle. He's going to counter it. Josh says, I'm going to dissolve it. So you play negate, I dissolve it. Tap my mana appropriately. And then he's going to make Aetherling unblockable. You see him sliding the mana forward here. So there's my dissolve mana. The two blue-black lands are for unblockable on each one.
Yeah.
Yeah, unblockable, attack. Not Elspeth. I promise it'll be you. And get you for enough damage to kill you. And it looks like after the dust settles here, we're likely going to see a handshake as Macchia is tapped out. And that is going to do it. So Josh Utter Leyton defeats Franco Macchia 2-0, just as the clock hits the buzzer. Utter Leyton 5-0 with Esper Control, and surprisingly, as he is a former player of the year. Actually, the current player of the year.
Current player of the year.
Excuse me, current player of the year.